I've been requested to speak on the subject of exotic materials found in the lore of Dungeons & Dragons. I can do more than this, give you a list of them all. I can also go into some detail on mining and metallurgy on Fantasy Worlds, thanks to an informative article from Dragon Magazine issue 152, printed in December 1989. So, settle back, my friend. Grab yourself a tasty beverage. We're about to get deeply nerdy. In medieval times, prospectors began their search for valuable ores in early spring. They looked for far more than telltale ore-bearing rocks. A warm and dry exhalation comes from underground metal, preventing hoarfrost from forming on short new grass. By observing the patterns of frost on grassy ground, one can see where ore veins run. Careful and patient observation of trees is also useful, as trees absorb metal through their roots, and such metal causes the first leaves of the season to blacken or fall off if the trees stand over a vein. Medieval prospectors knew to look for natural springs because water often congeals in mineral veins and flows along them. This gives the water a distinctive taste. Salty springs found inland indicate underground salt, which is quite valuable in and of itself. An experienced miner can taste for the soda tang of nitrium, alum, vitriol, sulfur, and bitumen, all of which are vital ingredients for the process of smelting ores, and may also be sold to those who practice alchemy, spellcasting, and medicine. It takes around a week for a skilled miner to prospect roughly 4 square miles, sometimes longer if the ore is particularly difficult to find or the terrain rather unwelcoming and hazardous. Prospectors will pause frequently to study stones, exposed rock, any water sources, plants, and make polite inquiries to any rangers, druids, or local people whom they can communicate with safely. This is one great use for magic that allows one to speak with plants or animals. Also, a well-informed prospector can be lucky enough to finish their investigation in half the time. But also, such informants, particularly elves, gnomes, furbolg, and druids, may lead the miner deliberately astray in order that they prevent any mining from damaging their pristine natural environment. Success in mining boils down to a fair bit of luck, the right equipment, training, experience, endurance, and caution. Even more so than stonemasons, miners in medieval times had their own branch of mystical knowledge that was widely respected, even to this day. Watching someone using divining rods to identify an aura of or field of energy radiated by ore or water sources is pretty amazing. Some diviners swear by rods made of hazelwood to identify sources of silver, ash wood to locate copper, pitch pine rods to find lead or tin, rods of iron wire to find gold. Of course, those who would use magical rings of divination or magical mirrors, enchanted crystals, rings of X-ray vision, wands of metal and mineral detection may not be much use for adventurers, but they would be every bit as important to prospectors and miners as suits of enchanted armor. Any mage, particularly those who research new applications of magic, will tell you that for every trusty magic item, there are hundreds of mages who died horrible deaths from constructing not-so-trusty prototypes, and that spellcrafting is an art that flirts with peril at every turn. When it comes to minerals and metals, the elemental planes are an easy but hazardous path to success. After all, without due care and some actual skill behind it, a powerful mining spell could unleash a volcano, cause earthquakes, seriously annoy elemental beings, and cause catastrophic environmental damage. Most of the time, discovery is not so fraught with disaster. A farmer could simply plough up some rich ore by accident when breaking in a new field on the frontier or constructing a foundation for a keep, a mill, a church, a roadhouse. They might bite into a rich vein of minerals nobody suspected was there at all, causing a rapid change of plans and probably relocation of the building site while mining gets underway in earnest. Word spreads fast, and resourceful, hardy folks seldom ignore such a gift from the gods. And as they know, there are plenty of others who will come to take it from them if they can. It's far from an exact science in the D&D world. On our own world, it was not until the 19th century that geology as we know it came into being. Nobody mined platinum until the 18th century, which flies in the face of the D&D world having platinum as a major source of currency. Of course, there are also other intelligent and ancient humanoid races such as the Drow and the Svirfneblin, the Dwarves, Kobolds, Orogs, and Peck, all of whom are exceptionally skilled prospectors and miners. A somewhat naive prospector might even venture underground to ask such races for advice, but care should certainly be taken that their involvement and awareness in any discovery should be kept to a minimum. Otherwise, this prospector is just going to wind up missing and the ore in the hands of another culture's eager clutches. It's not uncommon for a surface mining operation to accidentally break into the ore beds being mined from a race of the Underdark, who are working the veins from the bottom to the top, and such events very seldom involve amicable sharing. Deep-dwelling races know that the earth is formed in layers of stone and dirt, with new layers forming over the old. Veins of ore usually appear where something disrupts those layers, concentrating minerals in one place. For example, magma can squeeze its way into other stones, carrying ore with it. It forms vertical dikes, horizontal sills, blister-like laccoliths, and vast rippling batholiths. Diamonds collect in kimberlite pipes, cones of volcanic rocks that project upward. Tectonic plates also alter the geology of an area. A rising plate might lift metals or oil, creating a chain of deposits along the edge of a continent. Underground peoples know also about oil. Petroleum collects where the layers of earth curve, forming a trough or a trap for it. Again, this means that the D&D world differs fundamentally from our own, since in our Middle Ages, the only oils around came from animal or vegetable fats. Even pitch was commonly made from coal tar or plant resin, not petroleum deposits. In ancient China, there was some rudimentary oil drilling, but it used simple bamboo to draw easily accessible oil that was a short distance to the surface. The modern extraction of oil we see today is nothing short of miraculous by comparison, and as a result, we tend to take petroleum products, oil, petrol, and plastics for granted. The reaction of the dwarf named Hoggle to the simple plastic charm worn by the human Sarah in the movie Labyrinth is pretty much exactly how a dwarf in the Forgotten Realms would react to such a rare and unusual material, worth more than its weight in gold. Plastic is an otherworldly, exotic material in the D&D world, along with a whole lot of others from all the various planes of existence. For example, one of the most basic is simple ore from the elemental planes. This tends to be absolutely pure compared to ore from the prime material plane. So any elemental pure ore added to items can have remarkable effects. Just 1 ounce of pure ore added during the smelting process will result in metal that can be used to construct masterwork quality items with twice as many hit points. For example, a blade made from pure ore will hold an edge twice as long as any normal sword, no matter how well made it is. That ounce of pure ore is going to cost anywhere between 800 and 1,000 gold coins though, if you can find it. Back in the D&D world, once a vein is discovered, the next stage is to test it. This is called assaying, and is quite complicated. A lot of the things you might believe are modern inventions actually date back to the era of the Roman Empire. For example, Romans used prepared animal hide parchment dipped in shoe black, as paper didn't become common in Europe until around 1450 AD. They could use this to detect vitriol, a type of sulfate often found in metallic ores. So this is basically litmus paper, right? The treated parchment turned green when it was exposed to vitriol. They would then heat promising samples in crucibles. The pure metal would melt smoothly and at a precise temperature, and the melting points of different minerals were the key to identifying them. But the real magic was how they got the temperatures to exact and known levels using all sorts of different flammable compounds. But here's the trick. It wasn't the flammable compounds melting the ore that they were measuring, it was what compounds the molten metal would ignite that told them exactly how hot it was. So very clever and very valuable information for a skilled assayer to know. This is also where the science of adding fluxes comes from. These compounds added to the mix will separate the slag from the pure metal in the smelting process. Also, different coloured smokes were telltale signs of the presence of different minerals, something we know much more widely now thanks to clay glazes, fireworks, and mineral paint pigments. The assaying process required pretty well-controlled conditions, so the wood of beech trees was often used to form a bed of ash in a couple dish, as the ash tended not to absorb the metal, but any slow-growing tree will do. Assayers also had a much more sinister role. They would test metals for purity in order to catch out those who tried to fob off adulterated, counterfeited coins and the like. The legal penalties for faking currency were pretty severe in the medieval times. The D&D world is probably much the same, though not so many horrific executions are involved. Well, maybe. Perhaps one of the most simple tests an assayer would use in the field, so to speak, is to hammer a metal sample into a needle shape and scratch the point against black slate until it leaves a streak. A skilled metallurgist can determine the ratio of metals in any alloy using this method. Exotic materials may be too rare for an assayer to really know the rules for how it leaves marks on black slate though, but that's not normally much of an issue. There is no mistaking abyssal blood iron or Baatorian green steel for normal metals. Back to the miner, hard at work, now they have a going concern. The next inevitable development, of course, is taxes. They had best be vassals of the local authority, or they may just straight up have their entire mine and all equipment forcibly seized by the local nobility. The nobles won't mess around. Such a valuable asset will warrant a full call-out of their most formidable knights, foot soldiers, and a hurt now, listen to questions later attitude. So it is important to make very sure permission to prospect and a clear understanding of a mine's obligations to the ruling authority of the land are 100% legit, or it's going to get pretty hairy for the miner. One common rule is that in order to mine the Lord's lands, the miner must continue to work that mine and regularly contribute to the Lord's coffers. Failure to work the mine for even, say, 3 months may result in the local lord taking full ownership of the mine and bringing in his own labour to work it, trespassing the miner from their own excavations. Mines bring real wealth, technology and strategic importance to the region, and its culture can be significantly impacted by this, so the authorities are very unlikely to not pay close attention to what miners get up to. Within the mines, workers typically labour for 7-hour shifts. Foremen would signal shift changes by ringing a kapana bell, tapping on metal bars with hammers, or thumping the mine's support timbers to send messages deep into the workings. Miners earning money for the ore might resent being restricted to 7-hour shifts, and that's just human custom. The elves work even less. Dwarves can work for 12 hours and the Duergar can work for over 18 hours at a time, something that would simply break a human in a matter of days or weeks. Kobolds don't work for more hours, they just work at a faster speed and are amazingly productive, if somewhat reckless and prone to getting themselves killed in industrial accidents. Dwarves are often horrified at the death-trap state of kobold mining constructions and their barbaric practice of physically carrying out ore on their backs rather than using a proper minecart. The carts are often teamed up with complicated pulley systems or dragged out using mules and pack dogs. Sometimes simple sledges would be used to load up with ore and let gravity pull the sledge down a mountainside, with daredevil pilots steering the hurtling load with poles and hanging on for dear life. A lot of mines needed to constantly pump out water, flooding into the shafts, so big wheels driven by animals or people walking inside them would suck the water out. This runoff could also be used to make channels that ore loads would be floated down, a sluice. Wheels are also used for pumping fresh air deep into the mine, which is vitally important. A 10-foot cube contains enough oxygen to last one man for a day. If the character exerts himself by exploring, fighting, or digging, he needs twice as much oxygen. Fires also consume oxygen. A torch consumes a 10-foot cube of oxygen in 8 hours, and a small bonfire uses this much in 2 hours. Burning oil uses 10 times much oxygen as a wood fire, believe it or not. Medieval miners believed that a whole host of demons and gnomes lived in the shafts with them, and we can thank them for a lot of the mythological inspiration for Dungeons & Dragons. Most tunnel spirits were benign. They appeared to work vigorously and carry away ore, but they never seemed to deplete the veins. These creatures threw pebbles at workmen who teased them but did no harm. Other haunts were invisible but made knocking noises. A few demanded offerings, but they allowed anyone to dig their favourite loads. Anyone who refused to give an offering would die by falling down a shaft, being buried by a cave-in, or becoming a victim of one of the mishaps so common underground. Peck, Buka, and underground pixies are all inspired by these more benevolent spirits. Miners dreaded the more fearsome creatures. They considered it impossible to keep kobolds out of mines, and these small evil beings supposedly sabotaged elevators, allowing people to plunge to their deaths. Miners also believed that cobalt, a grey metal later used in alloys and paints, was a worthless metal substituted for silver by kobolds in the mines. A greenish metal called cobalt was said to devour the feet of workers who walked over it. This is the actual origin of the word kobold in the first place. Miners faced a lot of real challenges. Deadly ants could inflict nasty stings on those who sat on them, and most miners believed that every mine had at least one special kind of nasty bug that would attack the unwary and the unlucky. Some would swear that such bugs' poisons could only be negated by drinking from water found in special hot springs located in a hidden location either in the mine itself or some natural caves nearby. Some mine dust scars the windpipe and causes lung disease in old age, while more deadly dust can destroy the lungs much faster. So a region with great mineral wealth may have a terrible attrition in the mining labour force that has a wide range of impact and influence on the local culture. Some dust can eat away at open wounds or heavily corrode iron, meaning that miners have to adapt to using wooden tools, which in D&D can include more exotic hardwoods almost as strong as metal. Miners learned quickly to protect themselves from these dusts with sealed leather coveralls and breathing masks made of animal bladders. Dangerous fumes arose from some ores but could easily be detected with candles which burned in different colours, or with canaries that die when exposed to methane. The most common poisonous gas is carbon monoxide, created when workmen set underground fires for heating rock in order to make it easy to crack open with cold water. Even so, they learned to do this on set days. Then they took a break the following day, letting the air in the mine clear out safely while they were away. However, some smoke can settle on water and form a film of deadly arsenic. A common sign of severe arsenic poisoning is where the limbs swell up, with hands and feet becoming useless. This could happen so fast a worker could be climbing a ladder to escape, only to fall to their death due to their fingers swelling up so much that they couldn't hold on. Disturbing water with a film of arsenic on it will result in a cloud of toxic gas as deadly as the breath of a green dragon. Tunnel collapse is avoided by putting up wood or stone supports every 10 feet or so. Each support takes about 4 hours for a working team to construct and install. The dwarves are masters of mining in such a way as to carve these supports from the stone even as they mine through the rock face, which both saves time and results in some pretty amazing looking mines. Their love of precise lines and angles is very pleasing to the eye. Ore can be soft or hard. It can occur in vertical columns, horizontal veins, and lone masses. The dwarves are experts at mining horizontal veins thanks to their shorter stature requiring less tunnel height, so they don't need to cut through quite as much stone compared to the ore that they're extracting. Kobolds are even more extreme, with some of their tunnels being little more than crawl spaces. The mines of the Pack rarely need any supports at all and look more like strange natural tunnels thanks to their ability to shape and push aside stone with their bare hands. Raw ore needs to get sorted, cleaned, and processed to extract the valuable metal. Each one uses a slightly different process. Gold and silver can be dissolved by acids to separate them from other metals, all of which can be reconstituted by the full process and involves hydrochloric and nitric acids, which can be pretty nasty, but there are other methods. Gold can usually be washed out of its ore without heat or acid. There's an amazing variety of machines for purifying it, all based on the principle that gold is heavier than dirt and settles to the bottom when suspended in water. Ore that is to be smelted in a furnace must first be crushed. Some mine owners employ men with hammers to beat the stones, but mines with nearby streams use water wheels to power huge automatic hammers or grindstones to grind soft ore like wheat. In the D&D worlds, there exists a magic to construct tireless golems, or the foul magic to create a ceaseless workforce of the undead, who need not eat, sleep, or rest, literally not stopping their toil until they decompose and slowly, gruesomely fall apart. In the outer planes, such as the vast clockwork nirvana of Mechanus, legions on legions of semi-organic, elemental, and celestial blended modrons work in an intricate march of total precision. A rogue modron cut off from the Mechanus within the material plane can work with the repetition and precision of an automaton, but is still a living being whose exposure to the chaos of the D&D world will slowly result in their reprogramming to have independent and creative thoughts, at which point they are doomed to never return and are marked by Mechanus for recycling. Golem workforces can operate enormous facilities, but they are like termites compared to what fire giants can operate. They can handle red-hot metal tools without protection and are strong enough to pump bellows that would require humans to employ a couple of industrial cranes. Dragons can use their breath weapon to melt ore. Think about it for a moment. Blue dragons can blast a bolt of lightning that will smelt bauxite into aluminium ingots. Black dragons dissolve metals with acid. Red dragons blast small hills of ore and smelt rivulets of molten metal. I love to imagine a red dragon with a massive anvil and hammer, blasting the metal with blue-white jets of flame breath, and then thundering strikes from that hammer, resounding through its mountain peak lair, a massive granite natural cathedral of stone, carpeted with masses of scrap metal and huge stacks of worked metal wonders. Mithril, known as true metal to the dwarves, is a precious metal produced from ore mainly found in the Underdark as well as the mountain ranges such as the Sword Coast North. The ore appears silver and black in its natural form and becomes a shining silvery blue when it's forged. The main benefit of creating items from mithril is the reduction of total weight of the crafted item. This suits the hell out of dragons, who appreciate a beautiful metal that can be crafted into lightweight arms and armor that they can carry into the air in flight under their own power. A fully armoured dragon, now with enhanced bite, claws and blades fixed to its tail and wingtips, packing a few magic wands, a plus-sized amulet of protection, some magic rings on its toes, perhaps a magic ring fitted very snugly to one of its sword-length fangs. Yeah, dragons are no joke, but Compared to elementals such as earth genies, known as the Tao, or the elemental lords themselves, those beings can construct war machines the size of small moons. Not that they need to most of the time, even the Gith can craft citadels made of adamantine. Adamantine is an ultra-hard metal found in meteorites and extraordinary mineral veins, usually in areas of the Underdark bathed in rich phase-rest energy, or anywhere an earth node is located. It's a jet black alloy made from adamantine ore, which naturally occurs within volcanic flows in spherical clusters. The ore is called adamant and is worked together with other metals such as electrum and mithril. The forge temperature must be very hot, and it requires delicate skill to craft items from it. Adamantine reflects normal light with a green sheen, but magical light causes it to reflect a purple-white sheen instead, in addition to being used to craft adamantine armor, which negates critical hits. Instead, turning them into just normal, ordinary hits, the metal is also used for weapons. Melee weapons and ammunition made or coated with adamantine are unusually effective when used to break objects. Whenever an adamantine weapon or piece of ammunition hits an object, the hit is critical. The plane of earth and the plane of fire feature much more adamantine ore than the prime material plane. On the plane of earth, pools of water collect around thick veins of adamantine. Within these pools grows adamant algae, which forms a thick black slime that floats on the surface of the water and secretes a thick, shiny, dark red liquid with a strong acrid smell and a metallic taste. It's not pleasant to look at. This liquid grants those who drink it an enhanced natural healing for 24 hours. In 5th edition, a stable creature that isn't healed by any artificial means naturally regains 1 hit point after 1d4 hours. So just adjust those to 2 hit points per 1d4 hours. Natives of the plane of Earth call this liquid blood of the earth, and many battles occur over control of the stuff. A typical pool of water contains around 32 ounces of the liquid. 1 ounce per 100 pounds of body weight is the required dose for the healing effect, and each ounce of red liquid sells for around 10 gold coins. Unfortunately, it becomes useless within an hour of being removed from the pool unless stored in a container made of adamantine, or a preservation spell like Gentle Repose being cast on it. In Toril, the Grey Peak Mountains is most famous as a source of adamantine ore, and most of the smiths who have skills to work it are dwarves. Obdurium is a pale violet metal that is harder than adamantine. This incredibly rare metal represents the pinnacle of non-magical metal strength. It's also extraordinarily expensive, and all of it seems to be sourced from the world of Earth, home to the Greyhawk D&D setting. Star metal is a collective term for any metallic meteor ore found in stones about thumb size all the way up to ogre head size. A chunk of raw star metal, massing around 1 pound, can be sold for around 10,000 gold coins. The reason it is so expensive is because it's both very rare and also can be used to craft items that are ideal for holding magical enchantments. In addition to smithing weapons with superior strength, sharpness, flexibility, and durability, tiny pieces are sometimes sliced and polished for inlay work. It's always worthwhile to recycle processed ore. Some smelters accept the client's slag instead of a fee, knowing that the slag still contains valuable metal. In the case of gold, even the water that washed it remained precious. Many miners strained gold dust from wastewater using sheep's wool. A common practice, if they knew and could get hold of supplies of the metal, was to mix mercury with the ore to extract as much gold as they could by putting the most rich-looking stone in a cloth bag with the mercury and basically squeezing the bag until the mercury came out. Inside the bag, the gold was left stuck to the inside as a residue. The gold is actually still amalgamated with some mercury, but it's very hard to tell. It just looks like pure gold. Heating a gold-plated object in mercury will also loosen the gold enough to flake it off, also a skill used to restore gilded artworks and armors as the process doesn't damage the object. A dose of sal ammoniac and sulfur mixed with oil applied to gold has the same effect. It costs 50 gold coins for enough of that to remove about 10 pounds of gold. This could be applied for criminal purposes as well, of course, just like the metal gallium can be used to scratch aluminium to soak in and form an alloy that is as weak as soggy as paper compared to the original aluminium structure. Don't go abusing that knowledge, friend. I'm trusting you to be a good law-abiding citizen. Maybe that's too much information. Miners leached salt and chemicals from their ore. Medieval alchemists made lye by soaking the ashes of reeds in water and distilling the lye out of it. Saltpeter could be made the same way, but it came from earth on cellar walls and oak ash instead of reeds. It was usually purified by heating it in a copper pot. Bitumen did not even need to be fully dried, it just floated to the top of water where workers skimmed off the oily substance with goose wings. Miners prized salty hot springs, since these not only contained minerals, but their natural steam could power an apparatus designed to draw out water and automatically evaporate it with geothermal heat, and then they just collected the residue afterwards. During Roman times, people hoped that ore would grow back in an exhausted mine, as if the earth were a living thing healing its wounds. Perhaps in other realms, such as the Feywild and elemental planes, this is exactly what happens. In the majestic peaks of the dwarven afterlife, mines would have to be overflowing with pure metal ores, feeding the mighty forge of Moradin. Solanian Truesteel is a gleaming type of fine iron mined exclusively in the upper plane named Solania, the 4th level of Mount Celestia. The most famous weapons crafted from this metal is the Sword of Zariel, which sheds light out to 10 feet, which is quite painful to fiendish creatures. It also inflicts additional radiant damage and can blind those harmed by it. The Truesteel emits a faint humming sound and is a perfect quality. Rare in the extreme, a weapon forged from this metal would be a priceless treasure. Mines in the fantasy prime material plane worlds of Dungeons & Dragons could be abandoned because of gases or monsters, or because the shafts have never tapped into underground lakes of magma, but many an adventure might unfold as unknowing characters make their way through old shafts and tunnels in search of dangerous beasts or lost and forgotten riches beneath the ground. Some more exotic metals for you. First, Electrum is simply a natural or artificially occurring alloy of silver and gold. Some believed it has mystical properties concerning lightning and protecting one's health. The nation of Arandur on the far southern coast of Faerun is famous for its Electrum mines. Alchemical silver is simply silver bonded to any metal, usually steel. The alchemical silvering process can't be applied to non-metal items, and it usually doesn't work on rare metals such as adamantine, cold iron, and mithril. Its main use is in fighting supernatural creatures who have a weakness to silver, most notably werewolves and other lycanthropes. Cold iron is a type of iron mined deep underground. It is forged using a special process at lower temperatures than normal iron or steel in order to preserve its delicate properties. It is famed for its efficacy against fey creatures, and it's also effective against Eladrin and demons. Cold iron weapons cost twice as much, and enchanting such weapons costs an additional 2,000 gold coins, but can yield potent results. For example, the rare Holy Avenger swords are almost always forged of cold iron. Also, thanks to the metal's resistance to magic, thick manacles made out of it are often used to restrain wizards and fey, as it prevents teleportation and other magic use. The town of Phandalin on the Sword Coast North is a major source of cold iron. Arandur is a naturally occurring metal found within igneous rock throughout Toril. It's a blue-green streaked metal that appears within pockets of hyaline glass. After refinement and final forging, it turns a silver-blue color with a green reflective radiance, and it has the same weight as steel. The process of refining Arandur ore was previously a secret of the gnomes, but has since been shared with the elves of Evereska. To prevent Arandur from being brittle after it is mined, it is tempered with the blood of either red or blue dragons. As such, the extremely skilled smiths that are capable of working with the metal can use it to create a diverse selection of items, from gnomish locks and tackle to legendary elven warblades. Not only is the metal very durable, but it can also absorb simple magic spells and effects. Also, the metal does bond extremely well with others, strengthening them both. Astral Driftmetal may appear quite normal. It appears just like regular iron until it demonstrates its ability to sometimes act completely solid to incorporeal creatures. So a sword made of the stuff can literally behead a ghost. This is almost the byproduct of the spectacular metal the Githyanki used to construct their deadly and super rare silver swords, capable of cutting a soul free of its connection back to its mortal body from this astral plane. The other name for this metal is Ferroplasm, but it's also known as Gith silver. Astral metals are all mined from islands of drifting matter floating in the astral plane, not the bodies of gods and things, just matter. From the celestial upper planes of existence we find Aurorum, a luminous steel that gleams with varying hues of pink and indigo. An Aurorum weapon, shield or suit of armor that has been sundered can be reformed by bringing together its fragmented and broken pieces. They bond quickly and seamlessly back together, restoring the item to its previous state. This is thanks to their innate lawfulness. Ysgardian Heartwire is incredibly fine, flexible metal found only in the deep mines of Nidavellir in the heroic domains of Ysgard. It's not suitable for making an entire suit of armor, but small sections of Heartwire mail can be incorporated into chain shirts, chain mail, or heavy armor to reinforce vital areas. This reinforcement has the effect of increasing the wearer's AC by +2. Also, similar to Mithril, it reduces the total weight of the item it is crafted into by half. Fyrite is found in bodies of ore near pools of cerulean magma, which is also the only substance that can heat it enough to work it. Otherwise, the metal, always cool to the touch, is immune to fire and heat. Unfortunately, it takes double damage from cold, and any armor made out of it doesn't render the wearer immune to heat either, just the metal itself. It's an exceptional ore that always results in masterwork quality metal items. A lesser metal from the plane of fire is Flametouched iron, which is reddish and ignites the air of the prime material plane, inflicting additional fire damage on contact with anything flammable. Gehennan Morghuth-Iron is a volcanic mineral found only in the steep mountains of the bleak eternity of Gehenna. It is mined by the fiendish Yugoloths and turned into poorly forged weapons that appear pockmarked and pitted, reducing their damage by 1 point. However, the metal is extremely toxic. DC 12 on taking any slashing or piercing damage, or become poisoned, losing 1d4 hit points per failed save at the start of each of the victim's turns. Baatorian green steel is located deep in the mines of the Nine Hells Baator. Veins of green-flecked iron run through the rock. This rare metal, when alloyed into steel, can be used to create weapons of amazing sharpness. Any slashing or piercing weapon created with Baatorian's green steel has a natural enhancement bonus of +1 to damage, but keep in mind this bonus does not stack with any other enhancement bonus. From the plains of Pandemonium, we get the very rare and scary Screaming Silver. Crafted almost exclusively into weapons, the silvery metal absorbs and thrums with every vibration it is subjected to, so pretty soon it builds to a deafening metallic scream as the weapon inflicts severe cuts, thanks to the supernatural vibrations cutting through objects like the weapon is a chainsaw. Pearl steel is native to the elemental plane of water. It crafts into devices that function normally in underwater conditions. From the Eberron world setting, we have Byeshk. It's an extremely dense ore found in the Byeshk mountains. It propagates from Lamania and is thus quite effective against the Dalkir. The gatekeepers help the Dakani find it and use it. Fire brass is functionally identical to Mithril, but has bronze brass sheen to it. There also exists metal called Calomel. The ore is hard and white, the metal is soft and grey, yet it can be crafted into a weapon that overcomes the damage resistance of creatures associated heavily with fire. Purple Mournlode is another planar metal extracted from blighted purple ore. The silver metal is streaked with the colour of purple, and the blade will overcome the damage resistance of the undead. Thinaun metal weapons strip the souls of those who've been slain by them. So there's lots of different exotic metals, and you can pretty much come up with your own. That's just about it. There are other obscure metals with very specific locations and adventures. For now, my name is AJ Pickett. I create videos on role-playing game lore of exceptional detail, uploading at least once per week. As always, thanks for listening, and I'll be back with more for you very soon.